Next up, we want to talk about the specifics of the situation in Tunisia, and really to ask, certainly for those who don't live here, but also to get the input afterwards from the audience who do live here, to what extent has free expression benefited from the changes over the last 2 years and 4 months. And I have two excellent guests to discuss that with me today. Ahmed Gaaloul is a member of the Shura Council of the Ennahda Party, and Slim Amamou is founder member of the Pirate Party and was briefly a minister in the initial post-revolutionary government. Please give them a warm welcome. Okay, first.
Can I just comment on what Ross said?
Yeah, you can sit down first. Yeah, go on.
Okay, so I think Ross is a little bit confusing people about what is ongoing about PRISM, because the issue here is not the requests received by the government. PRISM is about a massive surveillance that does not need requests from anybody. So they are constantly collecting data on everybody in this world. And for this to work, I know that you have very carefully crafted answers for that. But I have two precise questions, if you can answer them.
Sim, what I will say to you is I will ask you to ask those questions to Ross, because I want Ross to answer them when we have the question and answer. Or you can pose the questions now, and that will give him time to answer it during the question and answer session afterwards.
Okay, let's do that. I'll ask the question now.
Okay.
So I give time to people to reflect on them.
Go ahead.
The first question is, does Google have any equipment from the NSA or any government agency in his network?
Okay.
The second question is, does Google give away to government agency or any other government or institution keys or certificates that let those institutions unencrypt communication from the users of Google?
Okay.
So those are the two questions.
And you can hold me to account for those questions being asked and answered. Now I'm going to ask you some questions. Let's start with you, Slim, now that you were a minister for 5 months in the government. You were famously live tweeting from inside government meetings, which is a great act of transparency. You became frustrated at the changes or the lack of them in those 5 months. Why did you quit, and why do you prefer the purity of opposition to trying to make things better in terms of executive actions? And that second person whose phone, don't forget the third one, you're in the drink. Right.
So I quit for different reasons after 4 months in the government. I had multiple reasons to quit. But the most important one, I know that it has been publicized as Slim has quit the government because it's the return of censorship, because there were 4 Facebook pages that were censored on the military court order. It was one of the reasons, but the main reason is I was a member of that government, not in my capacity as a minister or of youth or whatever, but because everybody in that government was committed to the electoral process. We wanted to make an election, finally in Tunisia, a real election, a fair election. So everybody was committed to that. Nobody cared about any issues of youth or whatever. Okay, and that process was ongoing when I entered the government. And my idea was I didn't trust the people who are in government because they stayed from the old regime. Okay. So I wanted to watch that process if it was a serious process.
From within government?
From within government.
Right.
And when that process ended, I resigned. I didn't have anything more to do with there, because that process involves writing an electoral law, which there was a commission in charge of that, and the government watched that process. And the second thing is organizing, preparing those institutions for the elections. Once you have that, it's out of the hand of the elections were out of the hand of the government. There was an institution in charge of the election. The government that was in there, even after me, was not in charge of the elections. I had no reason to stay over there. If I had the opportunity to go to the institution which was in charge of the election, I would go.
Okay.
I'm not interested in the governance.
Thank you for answering that question. Ahmed, let me ask you this. What is your assessment of the state of free expression in the 2 years and 4 months since the revolution? What has happened that you can be proud of in terms of furthering the cause of free expression?
Well, thank you. I think if there is something as Tunisian we can be proud of, is the freedom we've gained. I think that's something we cannot really, we cannot doubt. We are sure that we are free, and we are expressing this freedom, and we are feeling and experiencing this freedom. So this is something not only me, but me as one of the Tunisians, and all us as Tunisian people, we can be proud that we are now free and that we can say that we are free.
But
So
that freedom
that's
is relative. There are many instances of people who claim self-censorship, who claim of bloggers going to jail, of people getting into trouble for, quote, insulting, unquote, the military. It is a relative freedom, and can you really portray the scorecard as an entirely positive one?
I would say, yes, all what you are saying is true, and I would expect during maybe the next few years that we would have such incidents, because we are still building our new system. There is a system of corruption and dictatorship which has collapsed, and we are building a new system, and the issue is how to build it and who is to build this system. I think what's important and vital for us is that we should have everybody helping and collaborating in building this system. This does not mean that we would have no mistakes or no incidents while building the system, because we are doing this through our own experience, and we are learning while experiencing this stage of freedom. So we should expect, and we should, not tolerate mistakes and even some incidents in this issue. Well, yes, we might say that this freedom is not as we expect it to be, but we are struggling to keep it as it is, and we are struggling to widen this freedom, because we are, let's say, breaking down a system which used to make barriers everywhere. So we are going through those barriers, and some barriers are too strong or too tough to be broken down.
You're portraying this as breaking down old barriers from the old regime. Some people would say the new system is creating new barriers.
Well, I would say yes. The new system is trying to bring about new barriers. And that's why I am saying that we are struggling to strengthen this freedom.
What are those barriers? What is it that concerns you? And then I'll come to Slim.
We do have many concerns. We are still a new experience. We are still a new born experience. So we can have danger coming from everywhere, even from ourselves. We are still living in a state of fear, because we fear what's coming up, because we don't know what is coming up. All of us Tunisians, we have big hopes and huge hopes. We fear that for this newborn freedom baby to be killed before the time. We fear for all demons to come back. But I think that we all trust our capability, because of the revolution we've been successful and we've succeeded to achieve. So yes, this stage where we are living, it is a struggling stage. We are struggling together. We will make mistakes, but as long as we are standing up again after falling down and moving forward, I think we are going and heading towards the right direction. As long as we are debating, as long as we might do quarrels or we might get angry against each other, but as long as this is done through peaceful means, I think we are heading towards the right path. As long as we are not recreating a dominating state, which will dominate everything, we are heading towards the right path. So yes, there are dangers. The dangers is violence, and the dangers is through what type of state we are recreating.
Slim, what is your scorecard?
I think you're right. I mean, the way it works is that, of course, in the Ben Ali era, Islamists were neutralized. So we can say that we didn't have Islamists. So after the revolution, we have this new, it's not new, but now it's visible, a phenomena, which is the Islamism. And this Islamism is creating new barriers, like you said. So now talking about religion is a barrier. There is this guy which has been jailed because he's an atheist. He didn't respect the Prophet Muhammad. So he shared insulting photos of him because he doesn't believe in Muhammad.
And that was 7.5 years.
The judges judged that he have to respect Muhammad even if he doesn't believe in him. And he got 7 years of jail for that. So here's one example, but it's not the only example because it's not the only barrier. Because the reality is you are keeping the old barriers too. Those that are of some interest to you. For example, there is this hip-hop singer who's got jailed 2 days ago because he insulted the police. This is not a new barrier. It was there before. But it is kept there because the police is part of the state which you want to empower, and it's of some interest to the ruling party to keep that barrier. So
Let me just interrupt you there. What is your assessment of those two specific cases? The two guys who got, one was tried in absentia and the other who was sentenced to 7 years for insulting the Prophet, and the rapper as well for insulting the police. Do you defend those two sentences?
Well, I mean, I would not defend those two sentences, to be short and clear, but that does not mean I would accept people insulting the Prophet. No. Because
well, there is either a case against them or there is not a case against them. Which
no,
is it?
I would not accept those sentences. That is my answer. But in the other side, I will not accept people insulting the Prophet, because having the freedom of expression, we should also, with the freedom comes the responsibility to respect others. Islam is based on a general rule that is the freedom of belief and freedom of expression. But those freedoms, if I am to express myself in a certain way, we have, and everybody knows that we do have our private sphere, and there is also the public sphere. The public sphere is usually ruled by a law that preserves my rights and your rights. So we are in a way and in a stage where we are rebuilding a new law, a system of law. But up to now, we did not build that system of law. If we have an incident, we need to use the law, even if we don't like it, but we need to use the law, even if we don't like this system of law. Up to now, Tunisia did not change the system of law which we've inherited from Ben Ali. Up to now, Tunisia did not change the system of police which we've inherited from Ben Ali. So up to when we build a new system which will be in the image of the values of freedom and revolution, then we will speak whether this system is what we want or no. But up to now, we do not have a system which we like or you like. Up to now, we are debating over what type of system we need to have. Not only that, we are debating over what type of system which will enable us to move from the state of the old demons to the state of which will enable us to look forward.
Last questions before we branch it out. Slim, 2.5 years ago and before that, we would not be having this meeting now. We would not be having this conversation now. You would not be speaking publicly in the way you are now. Give us your positives of the developments of the last 2.5 years.
Now we are free to speak most of the time when we don't infringe on those barriers, because before it was easy. It was a technical censorship, let's say. Most of the time on the internet it was technical. For the, journalists were corrupted, specifically, systematically. Now it's a little bit different because they're doing what most advanced countries do, is they using the judicial system to censor. So they are suing everyone who speaks out, which is okay. It's a better system. It's more difficult for them to shut us off, but it's still not the best thing we can have, especially if we think that we made a revolution 2 years ago. So I understand why in US it works this way. It's very old revolution, but 2 years ago it's very short.
So is the glass,
for this bleach.
Is the glass half full? Is it half empty?
It's half full.
Right.
I'm happy with the situation now, to be clear.
Let's branch out. I'd like to bring on stage Reem Al-Masri, who started the website Whither, and to discuss the situation from a Jordanian perspective. Please welcome Reem. I think you'll need to share those mics between you. So Reem, or is there one? Shall I pass that one through? So let's start. Reem. Jordan has been out of pretty much the public eye when it comes to developments around the Arab uprisings and the events of the last 2 to 3 years. Can you give us a sense of what is the situation in Jordan? What are the perspectives for free expression there?
I think Jordan is following the pace of governments that are not that did not have a revolution yet, and they're actually learning from the governments that had a revolution in passing some laws and infringing on the freedom of laws through some subtle, intelligent kind of techniques. So instead of putting these laws in your face kind of style, they're trying to introduce them in a somehow more smart techniques. For example, I'm not sure if people know about the new censorship law that it's not a censorship law, but we call it that. It's the media and publication law that actually resulted in the censorship of 300 websites just a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And it requires news websites to register at the Media and Publication Department and to get a license in order to be a news website. So the websites that did not register before got censored. The way that this law was passed was at the beginning through, we can't prove this, but at the beginning there was a very sudden public discussion on the censorship of porn on the internet in Jordan. And all of a sudden we hear about groups that started pushing for this on Facebook and offline and having debates about it. So when we talk about the censorship of porn, you're actually hitting on the religious side of people. And we're a conservative society, so it gets and it garners some kind of support in Jordan. So with the censorship of porn, little by little, the introduction of the media and publication laws started getting introduced, and the two overlapped. and got mixed up. So there wasn't a lot of public resistance against the media and publication law, which actually made it pass in the parliament in less than 24 hours of discussion time. So this is one of the ways and techniques that the government is trying to kind of slowly move towards more restrictions on freedom of expression.
And given how much public attention there has been on free expression almost as the driver for uprisings and for challenges against governments across the region, why has nothing happened yet in Jordan? Why is it, are these restrictions taking place with comparative ease?
I think there's no will to actually move forward in Jordan. If there was, because we've been talking about reform for the past, from '89. So from '89, there has been a plan of reform, but the way that we're seeing it is that we're moving a step forward and then we're moving 3 steps backwards. So there's no will, and then the ways, the things that have been happening around the region is giving the governments new ways and techniques, as I said, of introducing some more restrictions without going through the mess of revolutions and the headaches of revolutions. And also there's another technique is actually targeting individuals rather than targeting, like the mass targeting of people who are going or crossing the lines. So, for example, if I'm putting a comment on the military online, somebody from the intelligence will be calling me to have a cup of coffee in their offices, and then for like 2 days, and then I'll go back. So this kind of threat technique, where it's not massive, it's individual, so it doesn't get covered in the media as well, and it works in a way. So we're kind of adapting to the culture of surveillance and censorship. And there's one thing that is actually posing another threat to us, and especially now with the PRISM kind of news breakout, is that we're not only being surveilled by our governments, but we're also being surveilled by other governments, and especially that Jordan has shown to be the third most surveilled countries by the NSA. And I mean, I think there's an involvement of not only governments but also companies in this, and it goes beyond Google. It goes to, different companies, 9 companies that has been addressed. So we can't really take the responsibility of companies. They're posing some threats. Now we know that companies say that they were not allowed to talk about these secret surveillance attempts, but at the same time we cannot disregard that there has been some breaking of the trust between the audience or the customers and these companies, and they need to be restored in a way.
And how do you think that can be done?
Just when we talk about transparency reports, we have to be really, really transparent. I mean, we know that some companies came up with reports saying that, now that the PRISM cases are out, there are 8,000 to 9,000 requests that have been asked from the NSA. But this is not what we say when we talk about transparency. We're talking about government companies telling us that this is what could happen, and then you have the choice to use our services or not. Companies need to make that moral decision, because at the end of the day, we entrusted this company with our data. So in reverse, we need to at least know our choices and to set our expectations better. And I want to address one thing, especially with the answers that companies are crafting to, let's say, crafting to the public when it comes to PRISM. We're saying that there is no direct access. And it's true, there is no direct access. You're not giving the companies or the government a direct access on a clustered amount of data, because it's not useful for them. But at the same time, you're giving them direct access to efficient kind of data that they can use. So this is one thing that we need to address, that it's true that you're not giving them direct access, but you're giving them some kind of access. And if that gets to the public, then you're restoring this kind of information. And you're definitely not giving them a backdoor, because backdoor means that you don't know about it, but you actually know about it. So this is, so backdoor can't actually, it does not apply in this kind of case.
Right. Let me ask you, do you, and I want to then branch it out to the other two guys, do you believe the situation is getting more difficult for activists because it is easier now for your government to portray them as a danger to the stability of the state than it was before? Or do you believe you are making progress and that technology, for all your questions about surveillance, is actually enabling communication between? So are you optimistic or pessimistic within your own Jordanian perspective?
I think on the short term, I'm optimistic. On the long term, on the short term, I'm pessimistic. On the long term, I'm optimistic, because I think this kind of revelation is actually making us take better decisions on what technologies should we be using when we communicate with each other, and think more about our privacy, and think and construct some kind of knowledge on what's the best way to go around communication and mobilizing people. But on the short term, it's actually the efforts of what's been happening with governments and companies. It's actually undermining the civil society fight towards freedom of expression, because the US government keeps pushing for freedom of expression, but at the same time they're implementing their own surveillance strategies. They pushed against the ITU decision or proposal in 2012 when the Russian proposed it, but now they're actually doing the same thing that the Russians were proposing, which is have more control on the internet from governments. So it's really undermining the efforts of civil society to push for that.
Right. Let me ask both of you before we conclude this segment. Ahmed, can you draw any broad strands? Can you draw any broad conclusions for the region as a whole? You talked about the struggle to whether it's countries that have not gone through sudden change or countries that have gone through sudden change. Are they on different trajectories, or is everybody struggling with the same pros and the same cons?
Well, first of all, I mean, it's hard to say that there is a sudden change. Every change has a process. We would say some countries have just crossed the sea, and we still have the desert to cross, and hopefully we'll be able to build our city. But what happened with these revolutions is that we do now have values in which we believe, and that those values, we believe that we can do them, because we do assimilate to each other, whether Tunisian, Jordanians, or others, we do assimilate to each other. And now we do have those values in which we believe. We do believe that we can be free. And I think as long as we have those values will create a system of freedom. And that would take time. That is the crossing of the desert. And I think we are going to go through that for a lot of time.
Slim.
I think that we're not in the same place, I mean, as Jordan, because I know some activists from Jordan. Jordan is very particular, and that's why the prism is focused on them. I think we're in a better shape because we succeeded in toppling the ruler of this country. And I think in Jordan it will be more difficult to make sudden reforms. Now the trick is change is not forcibly a revolution. It's not always a revolution. What happened in Tunisia is we started to create a change by ourselves. And eventually the revolution happened, okay? Now the change could happen without a revolution, and that's what the rulers must understand. Something that Jordan is, has an economy which is oriented towards IT, new technologies, etc., services. And what the Jordanian government has to understand is the impact of censorship on this field. It's not just 300 sites that has been censored. It's the fear. It's, will I do a business in this field or not? No, I can be censored tomorrow. It's all of this. They will lose a lot from this censorship. And
they will lose a lot I suppose my question is censorship, particularly in the internet age, does it impede a country's development in the global market in terms of economic well-being or whatever? Or can you still relatively close off with reasonable success?
No, I can explain this clearly. I wrote blog posts about this in 2009. The problem with censorship, I'll explain it a little bit theoretically because it's important, very short, is that for decision making, for governance, if you want to govern something, to make decisions about something, you need information. Censorship is blocking information that you will need for the decision making. So censorship is ungovernable. You can't give someone the authority to censor. It's impossible. Okay? It never works. So censorship should be banned. It never works. And censorship creates more censorship because once you censored something, you can't uncensor it. You can just censor even more. And what happened in Tunisia, for instance, after a few years, we got in a situation where we had no video websites working. So everybody over the internet, over the world, for them, internet was about videos, and for us, it's still in the era of text.
Right. Okay, so let's release Reem, Slim, and Ahmed, and thank them very much for that, and they will be back on at the end for questions and answers.